Welcome to Focus on Business, a podcast show for photographers with me, your host, Jane Goodrich. I'm talking to successful photographers so you can learn from our experiences and have the business of your dreams. So join us and let's focus on business. Hi, welcome to today's episode of Focus on Business. And I'm really excited because today we have Luci Dumas. Welcome, Luci.
Hi, thank you.
If you haven't heard of Luci, I don't know where you've been because she is a fantastic baby whisperer, family photographer, but she also is a really great business coach for in-person sales, and she has a great podcast. And so definitely, if you haven't, you will know why you need to listen to her. So welcome. Tell our audience a little bit more about you and what got you into photography, what brought you here now. All of the above.
Just that.
In a short period of time.
A short period of time. 10 words or less. So when I look back on my life, I realize everything conspired to my benefit to become a portrait photographer. And I did weddings for 12 years. So that was a great experience. I was always a babysitter. My greatest joy every day, if I catch them, is there's two little boys that walk around the block with their parents in the evening. And if I hear the big wheel, I get up and they run and give me a great big hug. So there's that. Babysat, worked at a children's store for 2 years. I've always been creative. And I accidentally became the editor of my high school yearbook. I thought I was trying out for one activity, but I got the mumps during tryouts. So I wasn't able to do that. And then I got a yearbook. And that's such a great experience for visual things. I always had a little cheapy point and shoot camera. I was intimidated by the technology. And then I was on a date with a long distance boyfriend. We met up. I live in San Diego. He was in the Bay Area. We met up in Santa Barbara and he had purchased a camera. And he wasn't the sharpest crayon in the box. So I'm the one that got the instructions out and got the film in and figured out how to use it. And the first couple of things that I took with that, it was just like you hear that with the light streaming down, because I'd always wanted to be able to photograph in the shade. And I saw as a photographer my whole life. My first memory before I was 3 was the light coming in my bedroom window. So, and Lucy means light. So kind of natural. I had a business in the airport, recession hit, and my contract was canceled. And everybody just kept saying, you should be a photographer. Because I'd become, like I'm sure a lot of listeners, it had been turned into an obsession. I'd spend like days in the dark room and things like that. So anyway, it just unfolded. I thought I was going to be a holistic health practitioner. And when I went for the interview at the school, they said, well, we'd love to have you, but you want to be a photographer. It's like the way that I lit up when they asked me, well, what other things do you like? Like the magic 8-ball, all things point to yes. So
right. They were, the signs were there and you sort of picked them up. Well, yes, like they were guiding you. They were like, hey, I'm going to put this camera in this. Yeah. This guy.
And I always loved weddings. I cry at cartoon weddings. So I picked the specialty of weddings because I could see that you could make a living pretty quickly if you could figure out how to get to the brides and start building. And there's always somebody at any price point that will hire you if you're.
And not a lot of people are getting married, right? And
yeah. And it's so easy to network and get work from other vendors. So I was a natural networker. I didn't realize it. My mom was a great salesperson. She worked at JCPenney's. And 15 years later, after she moved away, she got in the jewelry department where they used to get commission. And the manager was still there and still teaching the way that my mom, who worked a night shift, could get sales when the sales started in the morning. So I've never thought of sales as, it's bad, it's pushy. And so it's like the two things. I've always been creative. I've always had an entrepreneur kind of spirit. And then I was natural at sales. And we didn't used to have the option, which I'm glad about, of, oh, we'll just give you the files. So in order to make money, I had to learn to sell. And I worked in a little not good photography studio, not profitable, a couple of days a week to supplement my income.
Mm-hmm.
And all they did was what you call proof passing. Have you heard that word?
I've heard of proof passing, but I don't know why it's not coming to me what it means. I know proofs.
So basically, you have some paper proofs.
Yeah.
And you sit down with them and you put it on the desk and you put the price list and say, what do you want?
Oh,
or
right.
you send it home with them and then hope they'll return it. And
It's kind of like the school photos, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I could see how that wasn't working well. And then Charles Lewis, who's still out there teaching, went all over the country teaching in-person sales and wall portrait sales and using a projector and helping people, being of service. And so a whole bunch of us are like, that makes a ton of sense. So the culture changed, I'd say in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, where because professional photographers were taking the time and selling wall portraits, people wanted them. They'd go in their friend's house, they'd see a wall portrait. So then when I'd sit down with them, they've already been
accustomed to it,
fertilized for the idea that it's a beautiful thing to have portraits in your home as art. And so, and PPA has been working hard to swing the culture back to people, like when there's so many people doing, I don't know, shoot and burn it, we'll call it shoot and share, then it's actually great because it's easy to stand out and be different and sell your work. And it's so much easier to make a good living when you're doing that. And it's fun because you're showing the work in person. You're hearing the oohs and ahs. You're seeing what they love. You're seeing what they didn't love so much. So your work improves. You get a lot of hugs.
We've talked before about the in-person sales aspect, and you know me, I'm more of I'm just going to price my digitals correctly.
Right.
I do think that there is something about like an immediate reaction to some images versus what I've seen them order on my gallery. And so you do improve over time.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you say that sales isn't a bad thing. You made a really interesting point. Going into the business a few years ago when there wasn't digitals, you had to sell, right? Well, I was trying not to say it.
No, I'm proud of being in a career full-time, no rich husband, no help from parents, good living for 40 years.
Yeah.
So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you didn't. And you can interrupt me anytime because I probably talk too much. But the fact is sort of you went into it, okay, well, I can make money from weddings. And, so it's thoughtful. What genre can I go into that actually I can make a living from? And we know that you love babies and kids and you've sort of moved away from that. But then I know I have to be a salesperson. Like there's no way that you could have made it. We've made it seem so easy. Oh, anyone can be a photographer and make money. But, you and I have had that conversation. It's like those prices are just probably a session fee to pay for your time, not necessarily the product, which is your art. And so I think if you can think about it that way, it is great. I really do love the fact that you went into it thinking, okay, where can I make the money from? Right? Mm-hmm. Where can I make a living? Versus sometimes we back into it being like, oh, I like taking pictures of kids, but there's 72 million family photographers in my area. How about if you did headshots? No one's doing headshots in your area. You still can do the art, So I love that.
So I want to attach a little caveat on that because I looked at what I love. My first question for people as a business coach is, if you didn't need the money, what would you do for free?
Interesting.
And so not where is their business? Because I'd sell shoes at Nordstrom before I'd be a headshot photographer. That's always my dividing line. It seems like even though there's great money in it, potential if you do it right. But hanging out with kids, that is my greatest joy. So photographing kids is the perfect niche.
Yeah.
Even though there's a million photographers, there's only one of me. And
Right.
I'm selling me. And I'm lazy. And not really. My brother pointed out that yesterday, all the things that I do in my life and manage in my life. But I want to work smart, not hard. So
Yeah.
I'd rather do 4 sessions a month selling 3 to 7 large portraits for $3,000 to $10,000 each than if you break down $500 a pop. I'm sure that's not you, but a lot of shoot and shares, $500 a pop to make that kind of money, to make, let's say, $20,000. How many sessions would I have to do to get $20,000?
And that's in revenue and not profit, because we do have costs of running our business.
Well, I'm just talking about.
But we get the knee-jerk reaction of, well, I don't need $20,000. Well, that's not what you're taking home, $20,000. There's a lot more costs that go into it.
I'm saying with 4 sessions, I can bring in $20,000 in sales.
Yeah.
Because of my averages. The other, and this was part of this same awareness when I was starting, the same woman that I said I was helping her with her babies at proof passing, she had a coupon program going. I helped her once with high school undergrads and spent like 3 days just taking these pimply, greasy-haired, slouchy, hormonal kids and trying to get them to sit up and doing hundreds. And it was like, I do not want volume.
No.
It's a great way to burn out, but some people love it.
Some people are great at it. Yeah. So I talk too much.
What you love. Now, I wish that I was the dog whisperer and not the baby whisperer right now, because that's a niche that is so incredibly profitable and wide open. And like my neighborhood now has become dog and baby central.
Yeah.
So I'm now living in the ideal community.
Same.
And it's expensive here now. When I bought here because it was cheap and I was a new photographer, the new business. But yeah, so.
I'll caveat that caveat.
Yeah.
I'm not in San Diego. I am on the East Coast, and we do have seasons. So I'm a family and newborn photographer, and I was like this. I didn't say I wouldn't sell shoes at Nordstrom's, but I'm like, I barely even want to photograph adults. Sorry, clients, if you're listening, but I didn't. But I had 2 clients that were actually out of work, and they're like, "Can you just give me a headshot?" Okay, all right, fine. And then they both of them sent me emails saying that they got their jobs and they think it's because of the headshot. And I was like, okay, now I can do it. But so I actually only use it as a supplemental. Because of January and February being slow in my areas, there's a high demand in January and February because people didn't get their bonuses or so I use it. But I wouldn't do 100% headshot. Yeah, you're right. I'd sell shoes.
Right.
Probably would though, actually.
But the branding and headshot style has expanded so much. Mm-hmm. And because now as a business coach, I'm so highly invested in people's success that I now would have a lot more joy photographing. I don't like the word headshots, but executive portraits. I could see that for myself now more.
Why don't you like the word headshots?
First of all, the word shot is so violent.
But we say I took that shot.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
In the upscale fine portrait photography world, one of the first things I was taught was languaging. And to say I have photographic sessions, not shoots. And, it's those subtle communications about where you are in the food chain. And the word shot is great for a certain niche, but to get elevated where someone's going to give you $8,000,
right?
An executive portrait, like if you think about what
presidential portrait, I get it completely. Yes. Right. Yes. Yeah. You're not going to say, here's the president, there's a queen's headshot.
Right. Exactly. And also headshot is a very hard, those. I
think you're going to put everybody off talking about headshots, and they're all going to be called corporate portraits or executive portraits.
Executive portraits. I like that there's been a transition to calling it branding photography. Mm-hmm. Because that's the same thing. Anyhow. So nothing wrong with saying headshot. I just don't care for it.
if you were to move from the gorgeous sunny San Diego, and I'm going to give you Wisconsin, right? In 3 months, you have to move to Wisconsin. What would the first thing that you would do?
Big city, small city, medium city?
I'm going to say medium city.
Okay. So the first thing I would do is I would find all of the galas, charity events, attendees. First of all, it's a high dollar amount. Golf events don't count. They're a lot of money because it's expensive to golf. But especially I'd look at children's hospitals, high school fundraisers. During my quiet season after the holidays, that's what I do is I sit down and find a bunch of charity events and do auction prizes.
So do you do auction prizes for just the sitting session and the products are separate, or how does that work?
So I do a session and enough money, print credit, that they could purchase 1.5 8x10s.
Okay. That's clever.
And the half is so that, first of all, they're not focused on an 8x10. I don't put the word 8x10. If they want to use that credit, I keep it in the $500 or $600 range. Session fee, $200
credit,
$250 credit. So then they've got $75 left on the table because if a 8x10 is $150, they've got, maybe my math wasn't perfect there, but I've got
I get what you mean.
Or if it's a live auction, then I do an actual wall portrait. I do a 20x24, not framed, not on canvas, because if they have $1,000 in credit, there's no chance of, or there's little chance of getting a $5,000 sale from that.
Right.
So that's the first thing I would do is I'd line up all those. And then I'd join the Chamber of Commerce early. And if they have Zoom things, I would start attending those. And networking in places like that, we have to keep in mind, people that join networking groups, they're not our clients. They're people trying to make a living themselves. I need people that already have the cash. But those people know people. They don't know the people with the cash. They know other businesses that I can partner with.
Right.
Like a high-end orthodontist, the go-to orthodontist for everybody who's affluent, and creating a program with them. So I'd look for ways to get known in the community. I would find out if there's a farmer's market where vendors can go that aren't selling food in the ideal neighborhood. And I would set up a booth that maybe every other week, and I would do an opportunity drawing, enter to win. And I would then also...
You'd capture their email addresses and you'd meet them. I love that, right? Everything.
The email, yes, that is good. But specifically with that program, they enter to win a 16x20 or one of 5 second place prizes. And those second place prizes are a session and a $200 credit towards photography. And I go through the entry forms, and anybody that looks like a good prospect, I offer them the second place prize. And I take them through my very systematic sales program that I teach my clients, where you build a relationship, you help them understand the value of what I'm doing, step by step, all the things. And I turn those right away into $2,000 to $10,000 sales.
That's amazing. I love that. And so basically, you just really hone in on being quite physically present versus I'm going to do my website and my Google or my social media. So I know my physical presence, I'm going to meet people. I'm going to join the chamber. I'm going to say hi. I'm going to be in the farmer's market. You also mentioned like the galas. I love that. I think that that's a fantastic way of doing it, because relationships are really important, especially about the chamber, because I help a lot of other business owners, and you're right. The business owners in these are not your clients. Like, you're not going to get business from them, but you might get a relationship to partner with them, or you might say, oh, this person, oh, my clients are great, and I can refer you to somebody versus actually book you. So you're not going to get bookings per se, right? You say that?
Not very much.
No.
In the level, if I was doing a bunch of executive portraits, networking, every time I've been in a networking group, people are like, oh, you're a photographer. Oh, that's great. I need a new headshot. And I would like,
here's my friend who does it.
You can find me at Nordstrom's in the shoes department. But yeah, I would start building relationships.
Yeah.
So the beauty of the way that I would approach things is, as opposed to, and sure, I would do online things. I'd have a newsletter. I would, regularly for that area. But when someone's coming to me because they have won something, or they've either at an auction or an enter to win or a Facebook
giveaway
lawn ad, I'm not competing with all the other people that they find online as they're researching a photographer. If somebody wakes up one day and says, oh, I need a family photographer, we're having all our families in town for a big reunion, and they start looking on the internet,
right?
There's so many cheap and cheerful choices, right, that getting through the noise of that and being actually booked for it is harder than if they're like, oh, I won a thing. And then it's either yes for me or no for me. And that's it.
Right. And you mentioned when you see the enters to win, and you can kind of sort of, probably after 40 years, you can get a sense of who's actually going to be interested in actually photography just by some answers on a questionnaire. The same thing like with me, when I get an email, I can just tell. Do you actually have any red flags that you're like, oh, if someone's going to fill this out on a questionnaire, or they're going to send you an email, or the way that someone can, are there red flags where you're like, this is not the client for me?
The word just is a big one. I just want a few pictures of, it's so diminishing
of the artwork. Yeah.
Yes. And so there's 4 kinds of people. And if someone is listening out there that writes this down, makes a little chart and tapes it up, it will save you so much sadness or confusion. So person 1 loves what you're doing and can afford it. Person 2 loves what you do, but doesn't have the money, like really cannot afford it. Person 3 has the money, but doesn't care about what you're doing. And person 4 can't afford it, doesn't want it. So when someone is a no for what I do, if I've done my job of getting to know them, making friends with them, planting the seeds, letting them know how awesome it is, but I don't actually say, this is awesome. It's the whole strategy. And they're a no, then I'm just like grateful, because I'm not going to waste time with them.
Right.
So, yeah. Other big red flags. So the core of, I never knew this until I started teaching it, is what I do is I create a relationship where I become the trusted advisor. So what that means is I get in a leadership position at the beginning where I'm driving this train to someplace wonderful. And every step of the way, they surrender to the leadership, so that when it comes to the sale, then I can guide and advise them.
Yeah.
So big red flag is if someone's just like going to be in charge and tell me the price and and here's how it's going to go and here's where I want it, and they're not
not guidable. Right.
That's a huge red flag.
So I have a question for you on that, because I found that, I do newborn photography, and maybe you can help shed some light, or maybe definitely probably coach some people that have this. Is like, when I first started out, I was about the same age, maybe a little bit older than my client. And I don't know whether it's me or because I'm older, I did become that Mary Poppins, or they think I'm English, or like whatever it was, like that guide of like, oh, she knows what she's talking about. But I think back on it now, and I see kind of a lot in these groups, they're not respecting me because I'm young, or I don't feel like I can be assertive. What would you say to somebody that's listening now that says, yeah, but I'm 23. You can do that because you're older than me. How do you help them get over that?
So first of all, there was a young woman that moved to town that just took San Diego by storm. And she was doing newborns and babies. She was 18 years old. So I might tell them about that. What we're up against with that is a limiting belief.
Right.
So it's just as easy to say, oh, I'm too old. I have a coaching client that one of her questions before she booked me was, because she's in her 20s, and she's like, my clients are younger and I'm younger, and you can see the gray hair. I'm not as young as I used to be. Can you really relate and help people with what's going on now? Because yes, you have 40 years of experience. And first of all, I said, I'm a lifelong learner. And also because I have a podcast, I'm learning, the great things you shared when you were on my show. I learned from that. So I'm ageless in terms of my understanding of community, what's going on. So a young photographer, first of all, we don't put our age on our shirt or anything. But when I was editor of my yearbook at 17, I commanded a certain authority because it's just the way it is. So I just suggest people just say, oh, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
And
or just like you said, it is a limiting belief. You can probably pick another one, pick age, pick the fact that I'm from England and they can't understand me, pick anything. But
right. I'm too fat, I'm too skinny, I'm too short. The biggie for me was, well, I'm a woman, because this industry, when I started,
was very dominated by men.
World. Mm-hmm. There were so few women, but I used it to my advantage because my clients, being women, weddings, new brides, and moms, are women. So I used that. But I saw my very successful friends who were men use that quality of a man guiding and being there for you. And what woman doesn't want to kind of lean in? I mean, that's a big stereotype, but a lot of women like to lean into a man's energy and guidance and attention. So use what we have.
I think that's so true. Use what you are as a human to the advantage. Mm-hmm. I use the fact that I'm English. I kind of have a sarcasm, like I have, the dads actually find it semi-funny. My husband doesn't necessarily think I'm as funny as I think I am, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
I mean, the kids laugh and the dad doesn't find it torturous, but you have to use what you are as a human as well as an artist. And I think for anybody listening out there that's sort of doubting themselves on being a business, you took the leap or you're taking the leap. Not many people do that.
Right.
They still stay in their job and dream about it. You are really thinking about it or doing it, which makes you 10 times braver than anybody else. And you already have a leg up. So that's my little, pump up for the today. But what would you say the best advice you've ever given? You were talking about Charles Lewis earlier, but would you say that was the best advice you got, or a favorite book? I'm obsessed with books. So I always, I could have a million books.
I would say his program. I had his little cassette tape in my Volkswagen, my little blue Bug.
I have a gray Bug.
On constant play.
Yeah.
And it was on the telephone. So that's one big piece of advice, is use the freaking phone.
Yeah.
Because that's how you start the relationship.
Yeah.
And that's how you set yourself apart. And also, that's a red flag if someone's not going to get on the phone. They're not going to be.
No, I don't agree. I don't agree. Because I would buy from you, but I hate the phone. Absolutely hate the phone.
I'm talking about
your client, your ideal client, your program.
That's very hands-on.
Okay,
in order to plant those seeds, in order to build that relationship, because I'm selling me. The tone of my voice, listening, it's very hard to.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
Build the kind of trusted advisor relationship to the depth where someone's going to hand over $10,000.
Right. So it is more hand holding. Mine would be like, okay, I can see that.
Now, with the way you work, and that you're not sitting down with them, you're not selling more, which is it's working for you. But that's my favorite part.
Right.
So
taking away that from you would be like, what's the point of doing this? Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's like going deaf. Like, I would not enjoy it.
My favorite part is the shoot itself. Like, that's just for me. I'm like, I live in that moment and it gives me zen. But that's what makes us great, right? Like, different people, we're all different. And what makes us unique is great.
I want to say that a lot of my coaching clients who made the leap to go in-person sales, said, I thought my favorite part was the shoot. But now that I sit with people and I project the work large, so I get to see what I do big and I get to experience their reaction. And then I get to deliver this gorgeous art for them.
Yeah.
They change their opinion. Because if you haven't had 5 sessions where
dare
you
me
sit
to
down
do this,
in
guys.
person and get their reaction to it, it can change.
You got a tiny little squish of a newborn and you're posting them and then they poop in you. That's still cute.
Oh, I love that part. Yeah, I love the shoots. True. And then I love sitting with them and showing them, because so many times they'll be like, oh, right. I don't know if you got anything, because they remember the chaos and the pain of the session. And then when they're put to music and they're laughing and they're crying and they're like, oh my gosh, how are we going to pick? Like that, that's just awesome. My heart just
you are missing out
glows
on that.
From that. So it's like cooking a meal, but you don't get to eat it. I love to cook.
I'm a really bad cook. I think the last time I cooked, I made eggplant parmesan and I sent myself into labor with my daughter. And she's 9.
Parmesan is a very hard dish to make.
No, it's actually not bad. Yeah, I'm a really bad cook. Anyway, you had quite a career. Do you have any funny shoots or one that stands out in your mind? Did that really happen? Or do you have like 100?
The one that stands out is that I had a date with someone that became my boyfriend the night before our wedding. And it was one of the ones that went really well. And that little inkling of, gosh, I might fall in love with that guy.
Oh.
And his name was Tom. His name is still Tom. We're faithful friends now, many decades later. But I kept calling the groom Tom. And his name was like Greg. But it was so, and then just like all day long. And luckily it was this really fun couple that didn't.
Did they know about Tom? Did they know you went on a date with Tom?
The first time I called him Tom, he's like, my name's Greg. And I was like, oh, sorry. And then the next time, he says, my name's Greg. And I'm like, I know that. Okay, you guys, I was on a date last night with Tom, and I think I'm falling in love with him. I just couldn't.
No, you couldn't get it out of your head.
Called him Tom 15 times.
That's funny.
And that could be a disaster, but luckily it was the right client. So
I have a funny story on that. Is I always remember the kids' names and the mom's names, and dad's names that are 3 letters or 4. Really struggle with. And it's because I'm not having the communication with them, or on the shoot, I say dad and this, and I'm not joking, this guy kept calling him Jim, and it was the 7th shoot. And he's like, you do realize my name's Joe. And I was like, I don't know. Well, now you're Jim to me. Sorry.
Yeah.
But and I think he'd said it a few shoots before too. And now it was just a joke. It's just, and I was like, all right.
Well,
fine.
You just need to change your name, Joe.
Yeah, you just look like a Jim to me. I'm sorry, Joe, or whichever one it was. That and Adam, Matt, and Dan. Sorry if anyone's listening, but Dan and Dave, I confused quite a lot of names, but not the kid. So that's awesome. So what do you like to photograph with? I like to hear what people's camera gear, and there's no wrong answer here. Mine's a 5D Mark IV, and then I love the 24 to 70, but I really am thinking about going mirrorless. Have you gone mirrorless yet?
Okay. My go-to digital camera, I got into the Canon Mark V, and then Mark V 1, and then 2, and then 3. I was afraid to go 4 because it's so sharp, and I would spend too much time retouching things that you didn't need to. And also at the time, I didn't want to use up that much hard drive space. My go-to, and I've actually changed a lot of people's minds on this, is that had the 24 to 70.
I should change my mind again, guys. What's she going to do?
24 to 105, F4 L series.
Really?
Because 70 is not a portrait.
No, 85 is a portrait. Yeah, you're right.
So getting that 105, and especially if you're doing anything outdoors I'm not a bokeh. Bokeh's not that important to me. Sharp facial features are important. And that's what sells. And the other thing is, if you sit down and you're showing the work big to people and you see what they object to, it'll be, well, you can't see the face well. It's not sharp. So you learn a lot when you're selling things and you're hearing all of these. Okay, so I can pose a family or pose a kid, and I can do a zoom and get like a nice kind of close-up facial feature. Yeah. Then I can zoom back and I can get their full body. Then I can zoom back more without moving. Yeah. And it's scenery, which is with the family. So it's really versatile.
It's a fixed focal point. So really it's going to give you the same sharpness across, you know. And
exactly.
F4 is still pretty decent. You know, it's not like 2.8 or 1.2, but you don't need that when you're doing a big group shot, and you still can get some good
kids.
Yeah. And they run around too much. You need more light.
So in my other camera, because I always have two cameras loaded and ready to roll.
Yep.
Has this 70 to 200, not the 2.8. That's too heavy for me, but the F4. And that will give me bokeh because of the long focal length.
Right.
And the other thing that is the go-to is a tripod. Mm-hmm. The way I get expressions from kids and everybody is being able to watch them and them to see my face. If I'm hand holding a camera, trying to get a natural expression when someone's looking at a camera instead of a person, I find that difficult. Until, like, if they're warmed up, then I can grab my 70 to 200, and pull it out, do some zoom, do some things, and we've already got it going. Now, I did try to switch to Canon's mirrorless, and I ended up selling it and losing thousands of dollars selling this brand new camera because it's all menu driven. And I can't just pick it up and know, okay, look at this little dial. It's on shutter priority or manual. And if it's bright outside, can't read the screen in the back. And it just drove me nuts. So I have a smaller sensor Sony that I took all over Europe, and I would think I didn't have my camera.
Oh, wait. Which one was that? Is that the Z?
6500. It's an AP.
I need an in-between, like a phone and my DSLR. Like I need the in-between.
Yeah. So this Canon smaller sensor, there's a upgraded 6500, like, I don't know, 6500i or something. And they've got some really nice versatile lenses that are pretty affordable. I think I have like a, 28 to 130 or something. I don't know. That's random.
Yeah, they were all changing to
so
28.
I was used to that. So I replaced the Canon mirrorless with equivalent of a Sony, but I went with the smaller size.
Yeah.
And then I bought a 24 to 105 lens.
Do you photograph your clients with the mirrorless, or you just stick to your Canon?
So because I've gone all in on coaching and podcasting, I haven't had as many opportunities to use my new full frame Sony. My plan is to do that. Okay. I haven't had it very long. I have a client that comes every year, and we do an album. There's never a wall portrait. From that, they order 8x10s and a book every year for 12. Do you think you'll
test it on them?
So I used the smaller Sony. I used both, but I found myself using that smaller Sony because I knew it wasn't going to be a wall portrait. But when my 5D Mark III is in my hand, it's like I can work with it in the dark practically.
Yeah.
So
I love my 5Ds. They're like my babies.
Yeah.
Yes. Right, this has been absolutely amazing, Luci. And I appreciate the fact that you're not feeling great and you still came on. I really do appreciate it. Tell our audience where they can find you. We will put it in the description.
So Luci Dumas Coaching, Luci with an I, LuciDumasCoaching.com is where you can find me. My podcast, there's a tab there. There's a place to book a 20-minute call. You can learn more about me. If you want to see my portrait world, it's just Luci Dumas.
And it's gorgeous, everybody. It's
Thank you.
Amazing work.
And yeah. And can I tell them about my gift?
Yes, you can tell them about your gift. Lucy's been so kind to us.
So I would love for 8 of you listening to book my complimentary Create the Business of Your Dreams strategy session. And we sit down and do a deep dive into what your dreams are, what might hold you back, your strengths. It's very empowering, really cool.
And those are free? Those are free sessions?
Free. I just love to learn more and find those little ways to help inspire people.
You're amazing.
To go for it. So what you want to do is go to lucidumascoaching.com, and you can either send me, because there's some people that wouldn't be ready for it. So I like to have a quick chat beforehand. So you could email me if you want, luci@lucidumas.com, or you could book a 20-minute chit chat.
Yeah.
And I'll give you some good tips right there. It's
you're full of them.
Website. And then if it feels like this is a great time for you to have that longer conversation, we'll just book it and we'll,
that's
it'll
awesome.
Be great.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Luci. I really appreciate it. It's
Thanks
been
for
so
having
fun.
me. You're the best.
You're
honestly.
the best.
No, you're the best.
We'll do this forever. I'm going to stop recording.